Kevin, Dan here. Walk me through this inflation fighting bill. I want to know if you think it's actually going to do what it says on the tin, because independent analysis by JP Morgan says it's going to have zero impact whatsoever. And of course, we have seen gas prices coming down in the United States from about $1 from their June 13 peak now. Oil also moving in the right direction. That's helping the inflation story. But have we passed peak inflation, at least on the headline in the United States? And what's that going to mean for the Fed?
The bill's name is a joke. It's actually inflationary because you're printing stimulus for buying things like heat pumps and EV cars, which you can't even get. There's money being printed and put right back into the economy for no reason at all. You have to understand, though, and it's fair, any administration facing a midterm needs to show it can do something, pass any policy at all. This is 1/10 of what Build Back Better was going to be, renamed as an anti-inflation bill, but everybody knows it has nothing to do with that. Climate change, taxes, all kinds of policy around EVs, these things have nothing to do with inflation. So the bill is kind of irrelevant in that respect. But taxes, the minimum 15% tax thing, that's a problem because it makes the U.S. less competitive. You know, the idea of a 15% minimum tax was floated by the U.S. Nobody else followed it. They inflicted their own wound on themselves on this thing. And so there's a lot of criticism going on here. And the massive influx of capital, the IRS, is being highly criticized as a form of tax to the middle class because you can't, there are not enough billionaires to audit. So you've got to go audit all the S-corps and all the small businesses and the people that are 65% of the economy. So there's a fair amount of criticism on this. But at the end of the day, most likely, and again, I go back to this idea that it's the last policy the Biden administration will ever get to put in place. So they got to run for it. They got to try and make it happen. Because after the midterms, gridlock in perpetuity.
Kevin, it's Hadley. I mean, speaking of that gridlock, when you think about it a bit more broadly, we're talking at this point in your view about a lame duck presidency, you think?
Yes, I am talking about that. And I'm not political. I'm just trying to be analytical in terms of how I deploy my own capital. I think for sure, the polls are not looking great for Biden. It's unfortunate, but this happens to every administration in the middle of their mandate. And this one looks like it's going to be far more onerous. He may lose the Senate, he may lose the House, but what matters is what happens in policy. And if you're an investor, you like gridlock. And I think that's what we're going to get.
Absolutely. And think about this for me with your crypto hat on. What does this mean for the crypto space in your view going forward? We've got a market rally.
We do. Crypto is in the crosshairs of a huge debate between the SEC and the other regulators. And that's the problem. There's a turf war going on. The good news is it looks like we may get policy or regulation on one single asset class, and that is stable coins in September. There's a bill being bipartisan posted that would allow a US dollar-based payment system built around the idea that you could audit it every 30 days and no security inside of it would have a duration of longer than 12 months. But it would support the idea of a payment system backed by the US dollar as a global system. And I think whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you like that idea. That's the only thing on the horizon. The ETF on Bitcoin struck down. The only reason we're getting a rally now on digital currencies is that most people are starting to figure out that when they open up the spigot of regulation, there's a lot of interest in sovereign and pension plans. They won't buy it yet, but if we got policy and regulation on just stable coins, Circle has 54 billion, Tether's got 64 billion. There's a lot of money tied up in these things. And if you had regulation, it would force the audit. And that's what people are looking for. So I actually believe over the next 10 years, the advantages of blockchain financial services will become the 12th sector of the S&P, but we're a long way off yet.
So, Kevin, why did you call Coinbase toxic waste last week then? If you still support the cryptocurrency space, you still think there's gains to be had here?
Because they've gone to war with the regulator. most of us that are involved in financial services investments, and I'm certainly one of those, cannot afford to be supporting anybody going to war with the SEC or any other regulator. And that's what's going on here. I don't like the idea of suing the regulator. That's not what I want to be as a shareholder. I sold my Coinbase and I bought instead a Canadian version of Coinbase called WonderFi. They have 720,000 accounts in Canada across all the provinces. They are in sync with the regulator there. They operate under an order of the OSC, which is really in cahoots with the SEC in the way I look at it. But the point is, it's a North American jurisdiction, but it's totally compliant. So I was able to get out of a situation, and believe me, the idea of suing a regulator, I mean, that's so foreign to me as an investor. It's not a great idea. The outcome's unknown and very, very risky. And some of the assets that Coinbase trade are now being scrutinized by other regulators as well. So that's not good at all, I think. I'm looking to put my money to work in jurisdictions where the regulators are supporting a limited number of tokens. In Canada, Coinbase and the Canadian version called WonderFi only has 17 tokens on it because the regulator only allows Ethereum, Bitcoin, USDC, Polygon, Solana, that kind of thing, the larger market cap ones. Other jurisdictions I'm looking at to invest in, the UAE, close to you, the ADGM is very constructive in licensing now, and that looks very interesting. Switzerland and the UK. Those regulators are like the Canadian regulator, where they're cooperating with issuers, and that's where I want to put my money. The idea that my name would be associated as an investor in litigating the SEC is never going to happen.